We've been reviewing the book from Paul Hajek from Clutton Cox. Don't even think about buying or selling your home until you've read this book. It's a 5-star rated Amazon book, and we've been going through the chapters, just really explaining some more information about these chapters. Now, some conveyancing solicitors do promise to speak in plain English, which is a good thing, but other conveyancing solicitors still use things like jargon, and particularly things like hereinbefore and aforesaid mentions in contracts, which is rather a pain. So if you're embarking on a sale or purchase, here's a little help for viewers at home. Now, here are some definitions. Agreement. Basically, this is another word for the contract of sale. Caveat emptor. Now, this is the only bit of Latin, and it basically means let the buyer beware. Another piece of jargon, client care letter. This is the agreement with the conveyancing solicitor detailing how much you will pay, how you'll be treated, and what to do if you have any problems or complaints. Completion. This is the legal formality of paying over the balance of the purchase monies in return for a signed transfer deed on the completion date. And what does the completion date mean? Well, this is the date in the contract when the possession of the property is given by the seller to the buyer in return for any balance of the purchase price, also known as the handover of keys day. Now, contract for sale. This is the legal document which sets out the terms of the sale and purchase of the property. Contract rate. This is a penalty rate of interest payable by either the seller or the buyer if the conveyancing transaction does not complete on the completion date. Covenant. A legal obligation or restriction affecting a property. Now, D for deposit. This is a small sum of money, usually 10% of the purchase price, paid by the buyer to the seller's solicitor on exchange of contract. Now remember, exchange of contract means there's a non-refundable deposit. If you don't proceed as a buyer, you don't get your 10% deposit back after the exchange of contract. Disbursements. These are payments made by the conveyancing solicitors to third parties, but payable by you. These are typical government taxes. Easement. This is a right benefiting one property over another, such as the most common things a right of way. Exchange of contracts. Literally, the exchange of a signed contract by the seller and the buyer, confirming the legally binding contract to buy and sell a property. Remember, if you don't go through with it, you then lose your deposit if you're a buyer. Fixture, fittings and contents form. What the seller has agreed to sell to the buyer, either be included in the sale price or in addition. Make sure you check this. Freehold. This is the absolute ownership which lasts until you decide to sell, as opposed to leasehold, which is time restricted. Freehold land can have benefits of rights and be subject to covenants. Gazumping. Now, unlikely to happen to you, hopefully with your conveyancing solicitor, but where a seller refuses to authorise his conveyancing solicitor to exchange contracts on the basis that a newer and higher offer for the property has been received. Gazundering. This is when a buyer decides to reduce the offer at the last minute, pressurising the seller to accept a lower offer or risk the sale falling through. Land Registry. Now, so one of the disbursements, or Her Majesty's Land Registry as it's sometimes known, is a government office charged with authenticating sales of property and transferring into the buyer's name. Leasehold. Ownership which is time dependent and subject to more restrictions and obligations. For example, flats are leasehold. Local search. These are answers given by the local authority from their data and records to a list of standard questions about the property, including, for example, financial charges, highways and planning history. Mortgage literally means from the French death pledge. Yep, it's right until death sometimes, but now a deed secured on a property to ensure payment to the lender. Official copies of register. These are official copies of registered title to a property from the Land Registry. A property information form. Well, this is a questionnaire in standard form completed by the seller which gives information about the property. Redemption figure. This is the repayment of an existing mortgage on the property. Now, registered land. Property, freehold and leasehold, where proof of ownership of matters affecting the property have been authenticated, registered, by the government department known as the Land Registry. Solicitor's costs. Solicitor's fees payable for the conveyancing transaction. And remember, most of the money goes to the government as things like stamp duty. Now remember, stamp duty, land tax. This is what we think is a punitive tax paid by the buyer to the government on the purchase of a property. originally to raise money for wars against the French. Now, survey, an independent report carried out on the property for the buyer detailing any defects which may include a valuation of the property. Transfer deed, a new title deed transferring the property from the seller to the buyer, is used instead of conveyance nowadays. Unregistered land, this is property, freehold or leasehold, not yet registered at the land registry, where proof of ownership and matters affecting the property will be determined by inspection of the titled deeds. Valuation, if you take out a mortgage, the lender verifies the price as a fair market value, not to be confused with a survey. Remember to watch our video on surveys and make sure you do watch it. It's got some very useful information in it. Vendor and purchaser, a bit old-fashioned now. We prefer seller and buyer of the property because that's basically what it means. And Z, well, thankfully there is no Z. So that's basically a quick rundown of many of the jargon terms which you will see when you're dealing with a conveyancing solicitor. You can get all these descriptions plus much more information in the book from cluttoncox.co.uk. Make sure you grab your free copy of the best-selling book from cluttoncox.co.uk.